I'm Edward Warfield. I'm the publisher of Citybiz, and I'm honored today to do my first interview in Dubai.
My name is Mustafa Koita. I'm the founder and CEO of Koita Foods. I started the company in 2013. The types of products that we sell to consumers are in three categories of milk. We sell organic dairy, lactose-free dairy, and plant-based milks. Like I said, since we started in 2013, we've grown quite rapidly. We started off just in Dubai in one country. We're now in 10 countries around the world. Those include most of the countries in the GCC Middle East, as well as Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines. And we're most proud of the fact that we're now selling our plant-based milks in the United States. And we just started about a year or so ago.
So your career included a variety of technology companies that ultimately led you to Dubai, where you worked for Boeing. Can you provide an overview of your career and the decisions to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of decisions that made me want to become an entrepreneur. And I think it actually started during my childhood. That's sort of where the fire started. And, I can talk about my professional life, but as a kid, I think because I had a lot of personal challenges in life and a few setbacks, it always created something inside of me that wanted to catch up or do more or do things that were thinking outside of the box. And that's sort of where it all started. In terms of my career, a little bit more medium to long term, I actually started out in the tech industry and did a lot of startups when I was younger. And that also gave me exposure to entrepreneurship and whatnot. But I got into tech, security, eventually defense. And about 9 years ago, sort of went through like my midlife crisis and realized that, what really made me happy was based on some of my own personal interests. And since I'm all about healthy living and healthy eating, I then made a jump from the defense and security business into becoming a food entrepreneur because I'm very passionate about the whole healthy living aspect. And ironically, a lot of the experience that I had in the defense and tech industry, I found actually applied in other industries. And the things that happened in my childhood were sort of the fire in the engine that helped me, develop persistence and grit to want to start a company.
So let's go back to 2013 when you started the company in a free trade zone in Dubai. You started originally as a private label producer. Tell us about the launch and the pivot to where the direction the company took at that time.
Yeah, so we actually started as a trading and a distribution company. So I always knew that I wanted to get into healthy food, healthy living. But I think one thing as an entrepreneur that I pride about myself and my companies, we do a lot of experimentation, right? And test the waters with different things. And I try and do things in phases versus going 0 to 100, in one shot. And so what we ended up doing is first I wanted to start my own company, make a little bit of money and be able to sustain a lifestyle on my own whilst also learning the trade, right? The food trade. So instead of launching my own brand, I had sort of a phased approach. And as you were alluding to, I first started trading food products. So I got a tea contract, a private label tea contract in Saudi Arabia. It was worth about $1 million. And I literally was trading, tea to a very large retailer. And that taught me how to just move food from one place to another, how LCs worked, how freight worked, how to land a contract, right? Then after I did some food trading, I then graduated to brand distribution. So I picked up, I was like, okay, I could do this. Let me move up the food chain and start distributing brands. And so I got a agency contract from Snyder's Lance Pretzels and Cape Cod potato chips out of the U.S., which I love their honey mustard and onion pretzels. And I got a coconut water company. And I learned how to take those products from one part of the world, bring them into the UAE and Saudi at the time, and then sign a contract with the retailer and distribute at the retail level. And that gave me a lot of knowledge of how to do, the food brand awareness, dealing with the retailers, what the costs were, what the pitfalls were, and how to negotiate a contract. And then I graduated into phase 3 where I was like, hey, I can do this for another brand. Let me start my own brand, right? I was ready for that. And then it made it a lot easier because I had some food experience and I could under those same contracts, start inserting, my branded products. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And during this period, you conducted market research on the market for organics. When did you decide there was a void in the market for organics?
So we actually did some proprietary primary research, and we also did some, I'd say, gut feel extrapolation, and that the combination of those two is what made me say, "Hey, I want to start with organic dairy." So the first part of it was that I was a parent, and I have three kids, and we just couldn't find good organic dairy options in the UAE, in Dubai at the time. There was just one brand at the time. It was low fat in a plastic bottle. It didn't have any vitamins. It didn't really have any story behind it. And, it didn't taste great either, by the way. And so that created the idea, right? And then what I started doing is, because I didn't have a lot of money as an entrepreneur. In fact, I was broke, right? So I had to be, when you don't have money, you have to use creativity, right? So I then started having coffee mornings with moms. And I met with, I'd have 10 moms, get 10 moms, 10 of their friends together. And I met 1,000 moms and started asking them, "Hey, if I buy you a coffee, show you some ideas, what are you looking for?" And I learned so much, "Hey, we wish we had whole fat milk," or "My kid, is the number one application for organic milk. And the packaging, we wish it was in paper, not plastic," or "Plastic straws are bad for the environment," or "I want a resealable cap," or vitamin D was really important. So that was part one. Part two was then some of the gut feel, extrapolation, as I started visiting food conferences. So I went to Expo West in Los Angeles. I went to Expo East, and I started looking at what was going on in the West, because what happens in the West would usually be a trendsetter for, things in the developing world. They're usually a couple years ahead. And I noticed that in the organic food shows, the folks with the largest boots, right, were the organic milk guys, right? And the guys and the girls that were having the biggest marketing, the biggest events, the biggest parties were the organic milk folks. And to me, I was like, that's where the velocity's at. That's where if these guys have such big boots at the conference, there must be something said about that. Versus, for example, the organic tea folks who, you buy one pack of tea a month, the velocity on milk, you're buying one or two packs, a week, right? And so the combination of those two showed me an opportunity that, hey, there is an opportunity here. And this is within the healthy living space. Here's where I want to focus.
So preparing for the launch, you had to find a dairy that would meet your standards. So that seems like it was a protracted search. Walk us through that protracted search.
Yeah. So the search was totally customer driven. And I was lucky enough to have done a lot of proprietary primary research. And I still believe heavily in proprietary primary research. We even do it today, 9 or 10 years later. But after hearing moms say, "Look, I want whole fat, I want, something that tastes good, I want vitamins, I want, all these requirements," I then went around the world and searched. And luckily, after I'd left Boeing, I'd racked up a lot of frequent flyer miles. So it enabled me, to travel all over the world, visit a lot of farmers, and I went everywhere. As an American, I first went to the United States. I went to California, Texas, the East Coast. Then I started traveling, to Australia, around the region, Turkey and whatnot, and then Europe, right? And in Europe, I went to England, I went to France, I went to Italy. And what I realized is that at the time, the quality of your milk depends on, in the dairy space, what do the cows eat? How do they feel? How you pasteurize it? And what I realized is that Italian milk just tastes phenomenally different than everything else that I had. And for the exact same reasons that Italian pasta, olives, all those other things taste good. And what I realized is that whether it's plant-based milk, if it's made from Italian oats or Italian almonds, or dairy milk, the soil has a lot to do with it. And the beauty of Italy is that Mount Vesuvius exploded all over Italy. So the land is full of nutrient-rich soil. And that has a huge, huge impact on the quality of your product. And Italian products tend to be kind of premium and nicer. And as a parent, we made a parenting decision that we don't want to make the cheapest organic milk. We want to make the best organic milk. And that's what led me. that was the thought process that went behind it. Again, driven by a lot of market research, but also traveling all over the world and learning about how dairy and non-dairy was produced and what makes a good product.
And I was reading about your launch. Social media played a very important role in that. Can you tell us the role that you had bloggers and yeah, tell us how you use social media to launch your company?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really brings me back many years because, so again, I get back to the fact that when you're a startup at that time, you don't have a lot of money, right? What your biggest advantage is creativity and agility, right? So I could move fast and I had to be very creative. I'm a very young at heart person. My kids are on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I really enjoy it. And what I realized is about 7 years ago, the traditional FMCG companies were going with, OBL and BTL and, billboards and stuff like that. And I quickly realized that, hey, Instagram or Facebook, or this is where the eyeballs were going, right? And so a lot of the larger companies hadn't figured that out or didn't move fast enough. And so I started befriending a lot of the influential social media influencers in Dubai. They really liked what I had to say. They liked my product. They loved my passion. And their brand, they wanted to associate with a passionate homegrown brand. It was good for them too. And so we started developing partnerships with the social media influencers. And frankly, back then, a lot of them didn't even have rate cards or ways to commercially work. I helped them develop that, back in the days. So, and things have changed now, but I would say we're probably the first healthy foods FMCG company in the UAE that started using social media. And it really had a hockey stick effect on our traction back in the days.
And so let's move forward on that traction to 2015, which was a significant year of growth. How did your product line change in 2015?
Look, I think it changed because we kept doing proprietary primary research. So I learned from the past that these mothers and parents and users that I was talking to were giving me such great nuggets of information on what to do. And they even, the best thing about proprietary primary research or the learning that I had is that you got to be prepared for the good and the bad. They also told us things that they didn't like about our product. And I looked at all of those things as great opportunities to change our product. And so I think one of the things that led us to some of that growth is what could we change about our current products? How can we go to market a little bit differently, right? How can we adjust our social media? What are some of the new products or the NPD? So for example, at one point, a lot of the moms are like, Mustafa, we love your organic milk, but my son has a lactose problem. Do you have a lactose-free milk? And I realized there was really not a lot of options. And then, hey, we'd love an almond milk. Or, hey, oat tastes really good. So to answer your question, it continues to be proprietary primary research that really drives. And the thing that an SME has that I think all SMEs should be proud of is that SMEs can take proprietary primary research and productize it a lot quicker than maybe a larger organization. And there are pros and cons to that, by the way.
And so by 2016, you were starting to enter some new markets. Which markets were they? And tell us about the impact that had on the company.
Yeah, so we started entering new markets. We've been entering new markets every year. Right now we're kind of like happy. We've got a lot to handle, But I remember we turned on Kuwait, we turned on Qatar, we turned on Philippines. We had some African nations that were interested in us. And I think that what that really showed to me is that I had originally thought about our product as just being, in Dubai or very close to this region. Saudi is usually the next one that everyone goes to. But I learned that the consumer pains that I was resolving in my markets were exactly the same in other markets. And that gave us a lot of confidence to say, look, we could expand even further and further and further.
And then moving forward to 2017, e-commerce and the hotel, restaurant, and catering channels were introduced. Tell us about the impact again on the company.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting year because we were traditionally a retail brand. We're talking to the consumers at the retail space, but we've been so successful in the retail space that we didn't know that people would recognize our brands at a hotel. Or for example, we got a contract with Emirates Airlines. So Emirates Airlines is one of the largest airlines in the world. And in the first and business class kids meals on 176 flights a day, they wanted to serve the best organic milk. And so we worked with them for a long time. They're an amazing partner. And we realized that, hey, we could have a space, especially in the front of house sort of HoReCa or a food service space. Schools started opening up because, a lot of people were buying, moms would buy our 200 mLs to put in the lunchbox. And then we realized, well, if they don't put it in the lunchbox, we could just also put it in the canteen and kids could pick up a pack there. Coffee shops started opening up because, plant-based milks really took off in coffee shops. So we have an amazing, we won a Sophie Award for our organic almond and coconut blend, and it froths really, really well. So it was sort of a new market, honestly, that we sort of stumbled on because people were asking for it in different places. And that's when we built out sort of a food service offering. We started hiring people that specialize in food service.
And at that time, you also established a relationship with Hillebrand. Can you tell us about that company and the importance of that partnership?
Yeah, so they're a logistics company, and they basically specialize in liquids, transporting liquids all over the world. They've been a great partner of ours on the freight side, and I think even more so during COVID. As you may know, the whole freight industry, got turned upside down. And I think what we realized is that not only do we have to partner with our customers, right, but we have to partner with our suppliers, right? And as a logistics provider, Hillebrand really, they helped us when it was hard finding containers or finding lanes, at that time. I would say even our supplier, we work with a supplier in Italy, two suppliers in Italy, and they've also worked with us through our growth stages. And so I would say the learning is that you just don't partner with your customers. You got to partner with your supply chain. And I have a wonderful, wonderful supply chain. I have a great relationship with Newlot, who's a great provider, and some other Italian companies back in the north of Italy.
And when did you decide to enter the U.S. and how did you establish a distribution plan for the U.S.?
Sure. So we decided. My heart has. I'm an American. I was born in New Jersey, right, and grew up in Chicago, in Chi-Town, and frankly, part of it originated from just my personal dream, right? I want to eventually move back to the United States. I have one of my kids is in school there. My parents are there. My brothers are there. All my friends are there. And I'm so proud of this homegrown brand, and people were really excited about it here. And we started supplying to the State Department and military over here as well. And a lot of those folks who were going back to the U.S. said, man, your product is really good. You should bring it back to the U.S. So there was initially a personal, passion because I'm American. I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to bring it back home. But then there were Americans overseas, expat American overseas, that were saying, hey, man, this is great. Originally, I thought, man, if I go to the U.S., I'm going to get clobbered. There's huge billion-dollar companies. It's a saturated market. But what we realized is that, we're a premium niche. We're a premium play within that plant-based category, which is the category we launched in the U.S. And when we started showing it to buyers and showing it to consumers, they were like, man, I've never had Italian oats. I've never had Italian almonds. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article saying our Italian almond milk tastes like marzipan, and our Italian rice milk tastes like rice pudding. And we saw that, hey, there is a niche to go after. And so the other learning that I've always had for entrepreneurs is don't go in and try and be mass market. You'll get clobbered. There's no way you're going to do that. You got to find your niche. And we somewhat stumbled, but also we started doing research and we started testing the waters. And we found that was our niche, is the premium plant-based space. And so, we've gotten some really great advisors to advise us, and we've just signed up two fairly large distributors in the space that we're excited to start launching with now.
So in 2018, some competitors entered the marketplace. Who were the competitors and how did you respond?
Yeah. So we had a couple competitors. Remember, and it depends which market, right? So in these markets, international, I compete with the likes of like Arla and Friesland Campina, who are large organic dairies out of Europe that came into after us into the region. And on the plant-based side, Alpro, and so, there's some other players that's owned by Danone. And my initial reaction to competition is, I got a little freaked out. I'm like, these guys have billions of dollars, they're going to outspend us and this and that. And what I realize is, and by the way, those are great companies. They're very, very well-established companies, and they're established for a reason. But I'll tell you, there's two things as an entrepreneur that I've learned, right? Number one is that competition is great. Competition keeps you on your toes. Competition makes you work harder. Competition makes you blank slate a lot of your things that you're used to. The second thing is that competition grows the market, right? So when the largest organic dairy company came into the market, I was like one of two people that was creating awareness of organic. Now I have this $billion company creating, and that was the year our sales actually increased the most in certain geographies because they came in. And then they're not a premium play like us in the organic dairy space, but they created awareness, and then they brought new customers, and some of those customers were like, oh, I want a premium version. So we ended up seeing a lot of benefit from competition coming in. And so my learning is I like competition now. It's good. It proves that your model is working, is one, right? It's a compliment to you, and it helps you grow the market.
And so walk us through your capital journey. You were self-funded for the first couple of years. Walk us through where you are today in terms of fundraising, or are there any opportunities?
So we haven't raised any equity to date. We're 100% self-funded. This is a bootstrap company. And those days early on were extremely difficult. I used to have hair back in the days. That's all gone now when you bootstrap stuff. We don't have any debt as well right now. However, it does a couple things. One is that it teaches you to be very lean. We run a very tight ship. Our G&A, our regular expenses are very lean, and it forces us to be extremely creative with the few dollars and the time that we have. Now, we make up for that with agility and creativity. But, at the state that we're at now, we're also seeing that we've built this great engine, right? And there's so much more opportunity that we could capture within a shorter or medium time frame that at some point, we are going to have to start scaling this with equity raises and things like that. We're not, there yet, but we're looking at all those options. Bringing some debt in, can create a higher return on investment. So whereas before I was like, hey, I don't want to do it, I think nowadays I'm seeing the bigger opportunity that's coming to our table, and we're thinking that maybe this is the right thing to do. But we're going to do it in the smart way. Look at all of our options and whatnot. But to answer your question, to date, it's 100% self-funded. This is a total bootstrap, story, and I think that's what makes us really excited.
So in preparing for this interview, I obtained a copy of the Harvard Business School study on your company, which obviously gave me great detail and analysis. Tell us about that study, and really what came out of that, and did it really help you redirect your company?
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot around that story. So I'm part of this entrepreneurs organization, or EO, and they bring in, professors from time to time to do like Harvard Business School, London Business School, like executive MBA course things. And as I was maybe mentioning to you and some folks earlier, when I went to the Harvard Business School case study classes, Professor Linda Applegate was teaching one of our classes, and I was kind of the student after class, always asking a lot of questions, And I love learning. I'm always learning from everyone all the time. And afterwards, the professor's like, "Who are you? Who's this Mustafa guy? What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, my name is Mustafa. I started a milk company in the middle of, in Dubai." And she's like, "What?" And she was intrigued. And when she heard about our store and how we bootstrapped this thing and are competing with billion-dollar companies, we're faring quite well, she said, "Could we write a case study about you?" And to your question, what I got out of it is, one, they sent case study writers over to Dubai to interview all my staff, all my partners, our suppliers like Newlot, and our social media folks like Chris Fade, and all these celebrities that really were part of our journey, and they wrote the whole story, and then I read the story, and I got kind of emotional because as an entrepreneur, you never pat yourself on the back for anything you do. You're always like, oh, I got this challenge and that challenge and what I do. And it was the first time that me and my team could look at our story and see that, we've actually created something from nothing that's really beautiful, right? The other thing is that I built up a relationship with Harvard, and I was a surprise guest speaker at a lot of HBS classes. And when the students had open discussions about us, and I continued to talk, I talked to Linda, periodically. I've been learning a lot from some of the brightest minds in entrepreneurshop over the world, and that's been really gratifying too.
So where is your company in 5 to 10 years?
Oh wow, the crystal ball question, is a great question. But look, at this point, we've built an amazing brand. We have, with just our current products and our current markets, with our current contracts, I think right now we could grow 5 to 10 fold by just focusing on penetration, right, and just penetrating. And my dream, or my vision is that this could be a $50 to $100 million company for sure. We've got the supply chain down. A lot of the risk has been taken out of the whole idea and the concept of this premium, healthy foods brand. And I would love for it to be all over the world, and I'd love for us to work with some of the larger FMCG companies, to learn from them, to work with them. And I'd like to be the premier brand, in that premium space. And I really like the plant-based space. I like the specialty milk space. To me, it's extremely exciting. I think there's a lot of, I feel right now we're at an inflection point. There's a lot of hockey stick growth, ahead of us.
And so when will you be moving back to the United States?
So, my daughter, she's in Connecticut right now at Loomis Chaffee. She's in a boarding school there. Looks like my son's going to be going there in about 2 years too. And so Serena and Danielle will be there soon. My father, who's 75 right now, living in Chicago with my 3 brothers, has been wanting me to come back for a while. So, let's see. So the U.S. market is not just a great business opportunity for us, but it's a personal decision that I want to get back there. So to answer your question, it depends on a few things, but in the next couple of years, it'd be nice to spend more time in Chicago or DC or one of my sort of old hometowns.
Well, is there any part of your personal story or your corporate story that you haven't shared with us that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think that any entrepreneur will realize is that, and as I alluded to earlier in the interview, is that, being a good entrepreneur not only requires experience, to go through certain things and be at small companies and big companies and have industry experience and everything, but it requires a different engine in your soul, right? Grit, persistence, passion, being able to take on failure and look at it as learnings and not failures. Every day is war. There's tough times. And the point that I wanted to make is that my engine, I think, was built when I was a young kid. And I had my personal journey started with my mom passing away when I was 13 years old, and that set me back personally. I was this Indian kid who was supposed to be a doctor and an engineer and get straight A's and go to Harvard, and my grades went down the toilet. My father had a tough time raising me during those times, but something about that setback made me want to catch up, and do more, because I got hit back. I got hit pretty hard. I got hit in the teeth, and I think what the seed that I want to plant with you and the viewers is that, things that happen when you're really young actually have a huge impact on how you evolve as an entrepreneur. The entrepreneurship is a soul journey. It's not just a business CV, what's on your resume thing. It's not for the faint-hearted, and usually it's something in your early years that gives you that fire or that fuel in that engine, and it just continues. And through my college career, I was very entrepreneurial and joined startups, and that's where it all started. So that's what I'd want to share with them.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey. It's an exciting story, and we look forward to you returning to the United States and hearing about you in every Whole Foods and every distribution point you want it to be in. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the interview.